Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology. I'm a little bit more unkempt than I normally am, and the room is a little bit more messy than it normally is. I just got a new chair in, which I will set up probably within a couple of weeks. So that's what that box is back there. So it should be more comfortable for me to sit while I'm doing long projects. So just to explain, I'm not naturally messy, but the room is the background is a mess. I'm here to talk with you about Vedic astrology, though not about the comparative messiness of my room. And I'm going to try to keep this under an hour because I actually have a time commitment I'm trying to honor. And hopefully this will squeeze everything I have to squeeze in under an hour. If you would like a reading, I am available for readings. I have 34 plus years experience in Vedic astrology. I actually saw one of my many teachers today, K.M. Rao, on a live broadcast. So that was a nice surprise for me. And I didn't study very long with Mr. Rao, but he made a big impact on me. And so that was very nice to see him. The other thing is that um, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on in terms of war and the various um, I won't call them UFOs or unidentified aerial phenomena, but the um, the weird little drones or the big drones that are happening over the United States and also the United States attacking bases in Yemen just for a little bit, and also the what I would call the um, the risk taking just prior to the new administration coming in. It seems interesting to me that there's been an increase in military activity, and I think there's a desire to get some kind of action going before um, before the new administration has a chance to um, maybe try to calm things down. Uh, I do have a chart of India up, and I'll look at a chart of China just really quickly. So this is one chart of India from its national independence. And we can see India has this Mars. There's a transit of Mars passing over India's moon, Saturn, Venus, Sun, and Cancer. Now, this can be a little bit dangerous for countries like India. Oh, by the way, to contact me, let me just go back, just screech to a halt. To contact me for readings and lessons, it's 508 525 0001. I am planning to do a talk on Gemini astrology in February. And also, I'm planning to do some videos, some interviews with Vedic astrologers on retrogrades and other phenomena over the next few months. So, so stay tuned. We're going to get very active. So again, to contact me is 508 525 0001. That's the best number to reach me. You can text me at that number. If you feel funny about texting me, my email is garygomesg@gmail.com. So getting back to India's map, India's chart, one of the reasons I'm focusing on India, and I'll focus next on China, is because I think they're two of the most important countries over the next year, and especially over the next 6 months. And that's mainly because of Mars hitting this particular sign, and is in India's house of action. And India itself is in a Rahu major planetary period, if I have this birth correct. So as Jupiter is in the first house, there is no real danger with Jupiter being in the first house in India. Is involved in what's called a Rahu Mahadasha, which is an eighth house Mahadasha, but it's exalted. Rahu's exalted in this particular sign, and Jupiter's in the sixth house or six signs away from it, which can make it prone to aggressive activity all the way through January 9th of 2027. But the most dangerous months will be over the next 6 months or so. So again, India is a country to look at. The political environment will be a little bit violent, I think, especially after April of this coming year. And so I would expect to see some upsets or some changes in government over the next 6 months in India. This is a really fast look at the chart. Let me see if I can pull up China now. I just entered China's data. And these are um, what I would call accidental coincidences. Uh, so let me see. I need to fix the actual location, Beijing. Okay, so China itself is also a Libra rising country. It's in Mercury Mahadasha. This is not inconsistent. This time may be different from other times I've shown before, but I don't think so because Saturn's in the 11th house. Um, China did extraordinarily well during a Saturn Mahadasha. Now it's in a Mercury Venus subperiod, and it was floundering a little bit when it was in a K2 subperiod back around. Um, yeah, roughly between May 21st of 2023 to May 17th of 2024. It's entered a Venus subperiod, but Venus hasn't been particularly good for the country because of the transits that Venus has been going through. Venus has been in kind of rough shape. And again, it's really not. Venus is both a good and a bad planet for Libra rising. It's located in its own sign, so it should produce some good results for Venus, for China, excuse me. But I think also because of Venus's conjunction with Saturn over the next few months, and also its conjunction with Rahu in the early months of um, of 2024, you won't see China having a very good time of it. The other thing is, uh, it's right now Mars is in China's 10th house, where it is by at birth, and that's going to make China a bit more bellicose or a bit more aggressive than normal. It doesn't necessarily mean that China and India are going to go to war, but that danger does exist. And hopefully it won't. We're going to look at the world map in a few minutes and see how that lines up. But I think this particular, um, I think that one of the things that I always look for in charts is both favorable and unfavorable conditions. So this Venus upgrade up until 2027 should be more favorable for commerce, but China will have to make a lot of compromises. And also it can face some losses after 2027. The other thing that worries me about the Mercury Mahadasha or major planetary period, which is what China is going through, is Mercury's in the same sign with Ketu, and they're not very far apart. So this will increase spying activity on the part of China, theft on the part of China, and also aggressive action on the part of China. So this is something to look at very closely, and you'll actually see China, I think, actually attacking its own people. I'm going to go quickly to the United States chart, and I'll focus on Ukraine um, and I was going to say USSR, God, and Russia uh, next week as we're looking at world predictions. Let me see if I can find the US chart. Okay, so United States is still in a Rahu Mercury Mahadasha. Um, this is going to be one of the more interesting periods of the United States I think we've seen over the um, six, past roughly 8 years in the U.S. chart because if you recall, the Trump presidency or the Trump or the trend towards um, populism, you know, and again, it depends on your political orientation, what you call it, or um, authoritarianism in the United States started with the Rahu Mahadasha. But Rahu Mahadashas in the United States usually indicate some kind of attempt at reform. So you had essentially what I would call a big swing from the Trump effort at um, being more at working class interests to the swing to the Democrats, aiming more at what I would call ideological progress. It doesn't mean the two are mutually inconsistent, but the focuses of the two parties were uh, very different. And I think the other thing is with Mars being in the same sign as Mercury right now, there's more attention, there's more focus on aggressive action. That's why you've seen it ramp up, and that's going to continue over the next 6 months. Will it cause a war? Um, Possibly, but I would tend to doubt it. It's really not. The United States tends to get in wars or get involved in conflicts when Jupiter is in Cancer or during Jupiter Mahadashas. And that may sound really weird if anybody knows astrology. But if anybody really knows astrology, Jupiter is connected with the art of war in Vedic mythology. Dhanurveda is considered the art of warfare or the art of archery, and essentially, so Sagittarius has the most destructive nakshatra in it, and Jupiter rules that. So the United States will respond, and also the United States' rising sign is in that particular nakshatra. So there's more of a tendency to do things when either Jupiter's Mahadasha start or Jupiter is exalted. So within about 2 years, Jupiter will be exalted. It'll be roughly the same time as the United States enters the Rahu Ketu subperiod. So this will be more likely time for warlike activity to break out. But I'm still looking at major conflict not really starting until 2033. And I hope it doesn't. That's one of the things that I would look at. But on the other hand, this Mars combination down here to me would mean internal subversion, basically. So you'd have essentially the news media, which is Mercury Rahu conjunction, essentially sensationalizing or trying to uh, bolster um, opposition or bolster um, um, unrest. And those of you who haven't been around long enough may not have seen this, but I have. The way the media is operating right now is very reminiscent of when Richard Nixon uh, regained the White House in 1968. So essentially, the media is both criticizing the administration, but also is backing off on attacks. So I think, and this Rahu Mercury Mars subperiod, I think is going to be more media attacks, um, possibly some domestic violence between February 9th and June 30th. Um, and again, this is going to be really interesting, especially around April, I think, between March and April, because you'll have some kind of um, trouble in the streets. Some, just basically because of agitation from one or both parties. So I'm not necessarily blaming the left or the right. I'm just saying this particular combination, February 9th through June 30th, that'll be a time in which most of the reforms that President Trump wants to put into place or or most of the actions will start hitting, and that'll cause some opposition, so definitely some opposition. If we look at international relations, which we can judge from the ninth house, Mars doesn't enter the ninth house until um, June of this year, and the United States will adopt a more aggressive stance, but I don't think it'll deliberately pursue war. Right now, because Mars is in Cancer, that's making everybody a little bit more bellicose, a little bit more um, inclined to seek out violence or protect their positions. Um, One of the good things about this chart is because Mars is is has been passed over already, although it will go back into the sign within about a month. Um, the generals aren't really running things right now. They're just trying to maintain the status quo. So over the next 6 or 7 months, you'll see a struggle for power in terms of military and also governmental institutions connected with privacy and intrigue coming up a great deal over the next 6 to 7 months. So, so hold on to your hats, kids. It's going to be kind of an interesting period. Um, Saturn is still in the same sign with the moon. Rahu will be in the same sign with the moon come June, and that will cause, I would say, some fear and panic in the United States. Um, but also some expansion, also increased exploratory interest, increased interest in things like space exploration, which isn't really surprising given who's got the incoming president's here. But also, like I said, just to be honest, yeah, some panic, some small elements of panic. Um, so let's look at the map for right now. But in the immediate future, let me just look at the map for right now. Chart. Gonna go here. Jupiter's at 21 degrees. I know my colleague Joni Patry has um, indicated that around 23 degrees is a critical point for Jupiter, but it's retrograde for at least a couple of months, and it won't hit that spot for at least another 3 to 4 months. So I think we're relatively safe from a major conflict breaking out within the next month or so. Um, Maybe the most dangerous point, again, I'm looking at April being the most dangerous point in the upcoming year. But if we look at this chart right now, we have a Gemini rising, um, and Mercury's in the sixth house, so there will be continue to be continued opposition from the press and what I would call a continued miscommunication because Saturn's aspecting Mercury. Venus is in the eighth house, good for investments, so the market will tend to do well for at least another month or so. And but you might see a slowdown in the markets in um, come January through around March, just because of this, because of Venus hitting these signs right here. And let's see now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Trump should get most of his appointments through. There will obviously be problems um, with Ken. The defense secretary, I think, will be appointed, um, but we'll see, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. And over junction in Taurus, which is very good. So essentially, the upcoming weekend, Moon goes into Gemini this coming week. So right now it's a full moon today. So that's considered to be very good in Vedic astrology. Um, and so, and it's with Jupiter, which is again considered to be very, very good. So again, this next week doesn't look that bad. Again, the main irritant is the retrograde Mars in Cancer, uh, going over um, Pushya Nakshatra, which is a nakshatra connected with stability. So it will make people a little bit panicky or a little bit nervous. Mars is aspecting Venus. Again, some fear of bellicosity. I'm not sure that's an actual word or not, but some fear of bellicose action. And again, this desire for perfectionism in political life. Mars aspects Saturn is aspecting the ninth house. We're looking for perfect leaders. As I said last week, you're going to see a lot more action connected with entertainers. And, so the P. Diddy trial is really only, I would say, the tip of the iceberg. We're going to see a lot more trials, a lot more negative press about celebrities over the next uh, 2 years, if I'm reading the United States chart correctly. So this will be kind of an interesting time for the United States. And so a lot of people who are essentially icons or celebrity status figures for the United States will fall under a lot of shame, even religious leaders. But again, as I said, I think really um, a lot of entertainers have assumed the position of religious leaders because they're the ones we follow. They're the ones we want to emulate. Uh, we're in a Rahu Mahadasha. Rahu tends to give um, interest in celebrities rather than um, religious figures or spiritual figures. And as a matter of fact, a lot of I won't say there's an increasing interest um, in atheism, but there does seem to be um, more of a resistance to spiritual principles that I've seen in quite a while. And not just talking about things like personal rights or greed or things like that. It's just there's a strong ambition to essentially drive um, religion or ethical and moral concepts out, out the window, and you're going to see this continue over the next uh, years or so. Um, but I think that this Saturn Rahu conjunction will be the trigger for um, a lot of leaders coming down. One thing I had mentioned last week was, um, and in previous weeks, was essentially the governments of a lot of European governments facing opposition, and that's going to continue to be true over the next 3 to 4 months. So Macron in France is experiencing some problems. Trudeau is not European, but Trudeau is facing a terminal point in his career. Um, the French government is it doesn't necessarily mean that Marine Le Pen will become the president, but basically you're seeing a lot of um, shift to away from existing coalitions and to new coalitions. This is true in Germany. This is true in Sweden. This is true Italy. It's already occurred. It's true in Greece. It's true in Portugal. It's true in Spain and a lot of countries throughout the world. So in terms of this week, keep in mind, again, this is kind of an over expenditure week. This is not unusual. This is Christmas time. And Mercury is in the sixth house, so there'll be more fighting, more arguing. Venus is in the eighth. This surrounds relationship life, so this is actually a good combination. So this is not necessarily bad. There's a hemming in of benefics of the seventh house. So people will tend to get along with each other, but again, keep in mind, everybody will have kind of a hair trigger temper over the next week, just in general. If we're talking about individual signs, we have Aries, uh, again, a little bit overly optimistic, spending too much, but again, kind of aggressive, kind of trying to hold back and trying to make good judgments in terms of expenditures, and also trying to determine whether or not it's critically needed. But the Mars-Venus opposition does tend to make it a little bit more indulgent. K2's in the sixth house, so again, some problems with illness for the sign. Sun and Mercury in the eighth house are um, not necessarily bad, but I think the fifth house Lord going to the eighth house is um, gives problems with kids. So kids are either being isolated or they'll get involved with bad people or with bad influences. Saturn's in uh, the 11th house, so slow but steady gains, and Rahu in the 12th again, heavy expenditure pattern. For Taurus, Taurus has Moon and Jupiter in the first house. This is actually a really good combination for financial gains for this sign. You will have friends trying to take advantage of you, to be honest. And the second house Lord is placed in the seventh house. So this should indicate some financial gains through relationship partners. For the third house, Mars, some arguments or fights with brothers and sisters. K2 is in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the fifth house. Um, that particular combination is Again, some problems with children behaving badly, and also a relationship partner taking their side. Venus is in the ninth house. That's actually a good placement for this sign. It tends to make the sign more lucky or more aggressive in terms of what it wants to acquire. Saturn's in the 10th, a lot of hard work. Rahu's in the 11th, untrustworthy friends. For Gemini, Gemini has Mercury and Sun in the sixth house. This combination should make this sign uh, careful about trusting people, but also it indicates there's an attempt to struggle and help out children or help out relationship partners, and that will increase within about 3 days. And let me see now, desires will be fulfilled in terms of relationship life within about 3 days too, within about one day actually. And K2's in the fourth house. This isn't a bad combination. K2 in the fourth house can make a person a little bit angry or a little bit upset about family matters, but Mars in the second house, there'll be a willingness to confront those. And Sun and Mercury, Venus is in the eighth house, so that can indicate some problems with children uh, doing drugs or engaging in illicit activities. I don't want to worry anybody who has a Gemini sun, but that's a distinct possibility. Saturn's in the ninth house, slow but steady patience and attention to overcoming problems is indicated by this sign placement. Rahu's in the 10th house, good for growth and good for financial gain and good for recognition in the workplace. Or in the 12th, again, a lot of expenditure on both self-improvement, but also on family matters. That shows up very strongly in this chart, and also on career. Cancer has Mars, so this would be July 15th through August 15th. Cancer has Mars in the first house. This is not as bad a placement as one would be led to, as one would normally believe, because Mars is debilitated in Cancer. Actually, it's a positive planet for this particular sign, but it does tend to make this sign a little bit more short-tempered than normal, and also it makes it worried about children and about career. But again, this is not a bad placement. It does give luck in career. Mars aspects Saturn in this chart, so there's this effort as self-improvement or just trying to control everything in life. You really can't do that, but you try. Relationship partners are a little bit unreliable or difficult to deal with. You'll feel isolated or a little bit separated from them from this combination. K2's in the third house, strong desire to take control of what's bothering you. My Sun and Mercury are in the fifth house. Children will be a focal point, and also creativity will be a focal point, and money for this sign. Venus is in the seventh house. Relationship partners will be difficult to deal with, and maybe even a little bit disloyal. Saturn's in the eighth. This marks a major transition for this sign, which won't be over until March, but in March it will be over, and in March it will have much better luck than it's having right now. The ninth house has Rahu in it, which isn't a bad placement, actually. Rahu leads to Jupiter, which will give it good financial gains this month. And the main purpose of this sign over the next month or so will be in terms of improving uh, children, improving friendships, and also financial gains. For Leo, Leo's in the 12th, Mars is in the 12th house, excuse me. K2's in the second house. The first house is sort of hemmed in by malefics. K2 is really not considered to be a qualifier for that, but I'm going to make it so. And Mars and K2 uh, are in surround the first house. So that's going to make this sign a little bit edgy or a little bit aggressive. Sun and Mercury are in the fourth house. Good for financial gains, good for financial improvement. Venus is in the sixth house. Some enemies connected, especially with political life. Saturn's in the seventh house. So slow but steady gain uh, in rulership and also control over relationship life. Rahu's in the eighth. You will have people actively conspiring against you to thwart your plans. So just be aware of that. And they'll be working behind the scenes. They won't be working in the open. And some of them will be actually connected with either government or with um, leaders or influencers. Um, Mars is in the 12th house. Some problems with relationship life for this sign. This is what's called Mars affliction. So some allies, some people who seem to be allies are not really allies, they're more enemies. For again, not a bad month for not a bad week for Leo, but there are hidden enemies or hidden influencers throughout the chart. So you have to be cautious about that. Virgo has K2 in the first house. Um, and that usually makes the sign incredibly intuitive, incredibly perceptive, good sense about people, good relationships with children overall, although children will probably be a little bit angry with you. Saturn's in the sixth house. This indicates a lot of work, a lot of struggle in order to succeed. Rahu's in the seventh house, so attraction to, I would say, unsuitable relationship partners, but a lot of opportunities in that area, to be honest. And Mars is in the 11th house. Friends will be a little bit touchy or a little bit difficult to communicate with. Older siblings the same way. For Libra, Libra has K2 in the 12th, so a very spiritual position for this chart. Venus is in the fourth house, a lot of focus on home and keeping relationship partners happy. Relationship partners will seem to have a lot of energy this month because of Mars going retrograde and gaining strength. One, two, three, four. Some financial gain, but slow, very slow. Um, Venus is in the fourth house. We've already gone over that. Saturn's in the fifth. So again, this is slow but steady accumulation of knowledge and being acknowledged for what you've done, but slowly. It won't happen really until March. Rahu's in the sixth house. This is actually a good placement. It makes the person able to fulfill their ambitions or desires. Jupiter and Moon are in the eighth house. Some unexpected gains or financial benefits for this sign. Mars is in the 10th. A lot more attention focused on career growth. For Scorpio, Sun and Mercury are in the first house. That's not a bad placement. We have an exchange of lords between the first and the ninth house, which is typically, there are some problems with this combination, but typically it gives good luck to Scorpio. The Lord of the 11th is in the first house, so there'll be some financial gains from unexpected sources. Venus is in the third house. This gives a sort of politeness or hesitancy to act for this sign. Mars, when it does act, it will act aggressively. Saturn is in the fourth house. This gives power of position that won't be given up readily, to be honest with you, or quickly. Rahu's in the fifth house. Some problems with children, some children acting out. Jupiter and Moon are in the seventh house, so it will give this sign some allies. And Mars is in the ninth house. Again, like I said, aggressive action, especially in terms of dealing with bosses or supervisors. Sagittarius has Venus in the second house, good for financial income, financial growth. Saturn's in the third house. This is not a bad placement. Basically, I think whenever I see a combination like that, um, I get a little bit, um, the sign gets a little bit feisty in terms of trying to fulfill its goals or fulfill its ambitions. And Rahu's in the fourth. It gives some um, problems at home or some problems, some dissatisfaction at home. Jupiter and Moon are in the sixth house, so there's a struggle for growth or a struggle for balance with this particular sign. Although economically it's not a bad placement. Mars is in the eighth house, indicates gains from property or from assets like oil. K2's in the 10th house. This isn't a bad placement again. K2 is doesn't give a lot of recognition to the sign. But again, the only problem with K2 in the 10th is the sign can go off in unexpected directions. It can produce a lot of unorthodox activities, so it doesn't become predictable. This is the United States' rising sign, so that's why we have this kind of what I would call bizarre activity happening in the sky. I said I was going to talk about that, but that K2 over there and Saturn over here, um, it's this is really Saturn's connected with flying um, and flying objects, and so is this particular sign. So that's why we're seeing all these strange objects in the sky. Um, Sun and Mercury, are they aggressive? Yes, they are. Um, Sun and Mercury are in the 12th house. So again, there's a little bit of lack of confidence, uh, start of change. Venus sits in Capricorn in the first house. This is one of the reasons the stock market has been doing so well. Venus will move within about 2 weeks into Aquarius, and then about another 4 weeks into Pisces. So the stock market should do well, but it should dampen down within a couple of weeks from this chart. Saturn is in the second house. Again, slow growth, but definitely some optimism there. Um, Jupiter, Rahu's in the third house. Um, Strong desire for financial growth, and it will tend to be lucky. Mars is in the seventh house. Some difficulties with neighbors or with political opponents, and Sun and Mercury are in the 11th house, so good for gains for Capricorn. For Aquarius, Saturn's in the first house. This puts a lot of focus on technological innovation. It will over the next 3 months. It will even ramp it up over the next 6 months. And I think what we're seeing right now is we have this Rahu in the second house. There's a strong desire for control over expenses, and Jupiter and Moon in the fourth house. Strong desire for what I would call um, good behavior on the part of government. Mars is in the sixth house. That won't happen because Mars is in the moon sign. So essentially, you'll still see government trying to act legally very bizarrely. Uh, Mars is aspecting the 12th house. So again, there will be efforts to um, manipulate law, and that's coming from both sides of the political fence. Um, K2's in the eighth house. Again, unexpected upsets or breaks in life during the following week. Sun and Mercury, a lot of focus on work life, though, over the next uh, months, few months or so. So this isn't a bad combination, just a little bit challenging. Pisces has Rahu in the first house. The Lord of the first house is in the third house. So there'll be a strong desire for change or improvement of luck because we have Mars in the fifth house and Ketu's in the seventh house. So unusual responses from relationship partners or relationship partners will seem cold or a little bit aloof. Sun and Mercury are in the ninth house. This is a good placement for improving like through effort and improving status through effort. And Venus sits in the 11th house, should be good for financial gains, but Saturn in the 12th house, unexpected expenses, especially from friends. So that's the layout of the map for this week. Let's look at the time-space chart and see what we can glean from that. So, choices, going to revert. We're going to close this, and we're going to open it again. All right, so that's a lot better. All right, so we still have, it looks like land scandals happening in Alaska and Hawaii, and as a matter of fact, some economic setbacks in Hawaii because of the Saturn line approaching it. The other lines that I want to pay attention to are this Mars line, which is coming up really right on the edge of California and Washington and Oregon. Some possibility of some sea-based earthquakes again showing up uh, along this line. Uh, that's a little close uh, for my liking. Venus also has to do with water, so there may be some flooding in California and also some danger of fires in this part of the state. For Mercury, the Mercury line running through here, Mercury's basically a lot of communication, a lot of news coming out of Idaho, Washington State, Idaho, and looks like Utah and Arizona down into Mexico, New Mexico down into Mexico. And actually it'll go all the way down to Tierra del Fuego, which nothing seems to really ever happen down there, but that's where the Mercury line is going. We have a moon and and Jupiter line heading through Texas. So there could be some criminal activity down here, a lot of court activity down in this part of the country, especially down into Guatemala and into Peru and into Argentina as well. And there's a Saturn line going through, and there's a Sun line going through Louisiana and down into Nicaragua and down into Ecuador, Peru, uh, down into Bolivia. And I think this tends to indicate some governmental disruptions down there. There's a Saturn line passing right through Michigan, Illinois, uh, Kentucky, Tennessee, and down into Mississippi, Alabama area. And again, um, Nicaragua and Guatemala seem to be getting hit an awful lot in these lines. So I'm expecting to see some kind of activity down there. But this is something we really don't hear about in the news in the United States. But certainly some disruptions down there. There's a Rahu line going through Puerto Rico, Haiti, and North and South America, especially Venezuela, and down influencing Colombia and Bolivia. And I think this will involve some kind of scandal connected with these countries, with Chile and Argentina. For the rest of it, we have this Jupiter line running through, so a lot of court involvement in Argentina. You already said this, and even Paraguay and Uruguay. There's a Mars line, so we can expect some governmental scandals in New England, I think, and also some aggressive action. Luckily, it's happening in the middle of the ocean, but some aggressive storms happening over here and even hitting Brazil a little bit. Um, we have Saturn running through Iceland, uh, Ireland, Spain, and let me move this guy over here. And there's a Mercury line heading through. So we are going to hear about political activity in Spain, Portugal, Morocco, Libya, and Algeria, and also in France, um, the Netherlands, and even some economic setbacks in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, and down through Central Africa, and touching um, some big political scandals in Greece and Algeria, big scandals, and touching up in Greece and all the way up into Finland and Poland. So this will be interesting. The Rahu line goes all the way down into South Africa, so I wouldn't be surprised to see some governments um, get in major trouble uh, in Africa, especially in Central Africa. There's a Mars line passing over Russia and also Kuwait, looks like Kuwait and Yemen, close to Yemen down here. So there should be increased military action in Iran and also some governmental action, not governmental action, excuse me, some some movement towards peace in Iran, but it won't be very effective because Mars is aspecting Venus. So these two lines are sort of like an uneasy compromise. Nothing happening in Pakistan and Afghanistan this month, although we can see some, it's possible we could see some really bad rainfall in this part of the world. And the other thing we have is there's a Mercury line just bordering on India. So that should bring news of increasing tensions between India and China. We have a Saturn line running through there. So again, this could be over a contested area, or maybe even in Ladakh and Bangladesh. And Myanmar. The other lines where there's a lot of activity, or the other parts of the world where there's a lot of activity, is in Vietnam, Cambodia, um, bordering on in Indonesia, not quite there, and also some economic slowdowns in this part of the world, in China, and a little bit in India. Um, the other thing is we have a Jupiter line, though, passing through Vietnam, which is generally considered to be good. And we have um, a descending moon line going through China, which could increase China's economy, at least in this part of the country, a little bit. Philippines seems to be unaffected, but there will be some governmental scandals in Hong Kong, Borneo, and Australia. And also, we have a uh, sun's approaching Korea. As you know, the Korean government essentially got dissolved last week, and so there'll be some controversy there. Japan seems to be largely unscathed, at least this week. Um, but there is a Mars line and a Sun line surrounding it. So I'll just take that as they might get a little bit of a break. Uh, there's a Mars line passing through New Guinea and also through Australia. So we can expect to see some civil unrest in Australia. Um, Australia has become increasingly um, contentious in pretty much the same way as Canada has been. So there's a Saturn line running through Canada right now. So the Canadian economy probably isn't doing that well. And the Rahu line is also affecting Canada. And we have a Mars and Venus line running um, through Australia. So there's probably some arguments about trade or inflation. And the final line I want to look at is New Zealand. If I can just determine what that line is. It looks like a Mercury line, so New Zealand will be back in the news again relatively shortly. So that's it for this week. I'll cover some more predictions for next year in next week's episode. And that'll be it for me for this week. So thank you all very much for watching. I appreciate it. If you want to support the channel, um, like, subscribe, and share. Uh, I I love you all. I wish you only the best of luck. These forecasts are really for your or for your consideration and for your utilization in making your lives better for yourselves. Okay, so it's not really so anything negative I say isn't to scare you, it's to advise you and to watch out for pitfalls in life. Okay, so that's about it for me for this week. I love again. I love you. I love you all. Thank you very much for watching, and namaste. And we'll get into some more serious astrology in terms of um, how retrogrades work and other things, other parts, uh, yeah, over the next few weeks. Okay. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful day. And namaste. Thank you very much for watching. And again, like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel out a great deal. Thanks a lot. Uh, bye-bye. Get out of this sooner or later. There we go.